Hey there, sound sorcerers. This is the Sound Sculptor. I'm Jeff from Journey Productions, and today we will be adding the rest of the drums to our music track made up of sampled sounds from the field.
Just the sounds of Times
I recently
Square
went to New York City and found a bunch of really cool audio clips. They're widely varied in nature and seemingly not related to each other in any way. However, I thought this would be a perfect way to construct a snare sample. So I ended up collecting a weird noise coming from a swimming pool vent, a strange escalator sound, some crowd noise, some chopping ice, and shouting from a Mets game, and a car horn blaring in Times Square. Together, I thought these would be perfect bits of audio to cobble together into an interesting snare sample. So here we go. So, first thing we're going to do is we're going to bring in the video clip that I created from my field recording experiences in New York City. I want to get the clip spread out nicely so that I can go through and choose the audio that I want to use for my snare sample.
Just the sounds of Times Square in New York City. It's coming from...
All right, so here's the first sound that I want to capture. It's that vent sound in the hotel swimming pool area. So what I want to do is I want to grab the beginning and the end of the sound and then transfer it to another track. I found a counter person chopping some ice at an airport coffee shop. Let's find the beginning and end to that sound and transfer that to the other track. So here's that weird sound from the escalator at the airport. It sounds really strange and perfect to use in the sample. Let's get the beginning and the end to that and transfer it to the new track. All right, the Mets game was fun. Unfortunately, we didn't win against the Cardinals, but the game was really close. I'm going to get the sound of someone shouting and then another sound of crowd noise. Then let's find the beginning and the end of those clips and get those onto the new track. Finally, we've got a car horn blaring in the middle of Times Square. Let's get that one and move it to a track as well. Okay, so now we have our audio clips that we want to use for our snare sample. So we're going to bring these together and listen to them individually. Okay, so now we're going to place them on individual tracks so we can work on them separately and then blend them together. And make sure we have all the tracks approximately as close as we can to the same time frame. Okay, for the shouting at the Mets game, we want to capture as much of the track as possible. We want to capture the arc of the shout if we can. So if we cut too much off at the front and the back, we lose a lot of that arc. The best way to capture that is to use the time stretch process in Cubase to do this. Instead of stretching, we're going to squeeze it by the maximum amount possible. It asked us to create a new version of the clip. So we have that. Let's put it in the right time. Okay. And so now we have that. So for the Mets game crowd, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to use the time stretch tool to shrink it so that we get the whole crowd shout in a much shorter amount of time. It's going to ask us to create a new version. And we put that, make that the same size. Okay, so now we have a car horn. So we're going to use the same stretch tool on the car horn, so we get as much of the car horn blast as possible in that small time frame. So that's the whole thing right there. Okay, now we're going over to our EQ. So this is the mixer window. So what I want to do is I want to just listen to each one of these individual tracks. And I want to get the levels. All right. Okay, we want to get everything kind of balanced. All right. The car horn. All right. Get that vent right. All right. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to add some EQ to all of these things here. So we're going to add EQ to the, we're going to add EQ to the, to that crushing ice sound. Okay. All right. That's the first thing we're going to work on. And the reason we're working on that first is because it has the greatest amount of attack. And so that's kind of the foundation of the snare drum hit, is that attack. Okay, now the escalator sound, let's bring that in, and we're going to EQ that and make sure that sounds decent. All right, and now the Mets shout. Let's get a nice range on that first of all. Okay, here we go. That adds a little bit of background, a little bit of body. So now we got the attack, we've got a couple of interesting little sounds in there, and then we've got this body, which is the Mets sound. And now it's time for the car horn, and that also adds flavor to the thing. Okay. So I think we have a pretty good snare sound, a basic snare sound. Well, now what I want to do is I want to bring in an EQ to the overall snare sound itself. Not each individual track, but the whole snare sound. And we're just going to kind of EQ that. Bring down the bass a little. We don't need bass for a snare sample. We're going to get that slap. The mid-range is nice, around 1K, 5K. There's a little bit of nasal stuff I want to get rid of. Okay, now we're going to save it. We're going to save this sample as an individual snare sample. We have our snare sample. Okay, now we're bringing up the song. Okay, let's bring up the song. Okay, here's the kick drum that we did last week. And I am now going to bring in the snare sample. Okay, so first of all, what we need to do is get rid of these. This is from last week, and so we don't need these three anymore, the kick drum, because we have our very own kick drum. We've already saved it. There we go. Let's bring in the kick drum, and then we're going to bring in the snare drum. So now we have a kick drum sample and the snare drum sample in battery. Let's put them on their separate notes. So that's on C1 and the snare is on D1. Okay, so now we've got these separated. All right. All right, so let's go and let's just quantize all that so they sound good together. That's good. Okay, so we've got, the basic gist of the kick drum and the snare drum. So what I want to do now is just go in and kind of, I want to tweak these, the bass drum and the snare drum samples so that it sounds much better. So we got the snare samples, but we're using battery to kind of tweak those and make them just sound really punchy. Get that kick drum. Yeah. Yeah, there we go. But I have a better idea here. Okay, what I want to do is I'm going to create a second kick drum track underneath the first one so that I can have separate controls over the high end and the low end. So so I'm just tweaking these levels here. I've got the 2 bass drum, kick drum tracks, and so they're creating a really cool kick drum sound. Now, I want to get a hi-hat. Okay, so there was a clap in there that I thought we could isolate. And just take that little clap sound. Yep, right there. Okay. Let's get kind of a zero crossing on that, and then we'll get a zero crossing for the end and put it down on a separate track. And let's just hear what this click sounds like. That's going to be our hi-hat. All right, no, what we're going to do is spread it out so we can hear it a little more clearly. So let's spread this out to a full bar. Okay. There it is. Okay, let's save that. I think it sounds pretty good as a basic hi-hat sound. So we're going to save it, and then I'm going to bring that into the drum track that we've got. So let's put this on a separate cell in battery, and there's the hi-hat. Let's work with that a little bit. Let's maybe bring that, yeah, up a little higher. All right, okay, that's a start. It's a start, but I want to move some things around a little bit. I don't really like where some of the hi-hat hits are laying. It's the advantage of MIDI, people. I remember in the 80s and 70s and stuff when I had to do all this stuff live. Now we have the option of moving things around. Okay. We're going to just move some of these things around, and I'm going to just like go by real fast. Just move these things around. There we go. Okay. Okay, and that is kind of a basic little drum track there. So now that we've created a simple but interesting drum track, we're going to add some bass, a nice keyboardish layer, and then some lead lines. We'll be doing that over the next few videos. Please go out to thesoundsculptor.com and send me your questions, ideas, feedback, and anything else you want to contribute. As always, I read everything and will post your interesting ideas on the website. Until next time, see ya!